Happy Friday. Again, it's pretty drizzly in Sydney again for our weekend, but we're all pretty used to it now. It's not cold, it's just wet again. Anyway, back for another episode of On the Couch with Claire. And I hope we get, a couple of people watching this. If you want to post some comments, we're talking today again about separated families. And I say again because we've had a couple of people on talking about this, but it is an area that, you know, if you come to the clinic, most people know that our clinic specialises in, as does my fabulous guest today. So before I introduce her, most of you would know in our clinic we have these gorgeous books, Max's Divorce Earthquake and Harriet's Expanding Heart. And today I'm talking to the author of those two books, Rachel Brace, good friend and colleague of mine. So I am going to bring her in now. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Claire.
Thanks for joining me.
Oh, no worries. It's better than working on a Friday. I'd love a good chat.
I was just thinking I don't have my coffee. I usually have a coffee mug with me, but I don't have it. Oh, you've got one. And you've got good twinings too.
I do. Yes. Cranberry and pomegranate.
Oh, beautiful. All right. So look, let's get into it. So for everyone that doesn't know you, can you start off just saying a little bit about kind of clinically? I said you're a psychologist, but you know what you work in, and I know you specialize with separating families, and I want to know, how did you get into that area? Because it's sometimes a tough area to work in, and I want to know, as someone who works in it, how did you get into working with these families?
A little bit by accident and a little bit by design, I think. Like, I got a history, like a lot of us who work in this field, in child protection and in foster care, and about supporting relationships for children that aren't in a position to live with their parents. And that kind of led me to work with the family court, in working and helping the court get information about kids and families when trying to determine parenting arrangements. And after a while, I went into private practice working with that kind of population, using the skills that I'd built through child protection and foster care and the family court, and working in a more therapeutic way with families and children as they go through some of those massive life changes.
Yeah, huge. So you're seeing, I mean, like me, kind of those families who do end up needing the court system, as many of them do. And we need to remind ourselves that there's a whole heap of people out there who don't need the court system, still struggle with separation, but they don't use the court system, all right? They're out there and doing their best, kind of trying to fumble through amicably or not so amicably, this new territory.
Can I just say, like, the majority of families get through it and do it pretty well under difficult circumstances. So, and they do need support, and they do need advice, and they sometimes just need a good high five and a pat on the back for doing it well.
Yeah, I don't know if you're like me, because we sometimes see, obviously I still sometimes see people who don't come for separation, and they might come in for a school-related problem, right? Sometimes two parents sitting on the couch who don't realize at the start are separated. And when I get to that and I realize that, oh, you guys are actually separated, I kind of take a minute and go, sorry, can I just high five you because you've come in together about this other issue?
I agree. And then you have those parents that made the difficult decision to separate, and they come in to see you for advice about how to manage it and how create their story of separation to share with their children, and they want to do right by their kids, even though it's an exceptionally emotional time for the two of them. But they come in together. Like, those are the parents and the families that I'm just like, wow, how mature are you? Like, and how child focused are you? Those are I literally give them a high five as well.
Yeah. So I guess that leads to kind of, and before we get on to your fabulous books, one of the questions I kind of goes around in my mind is, and parents coming to me kind of pre-separation, like, how do we do this, but almost come with this like, we need this to be so it doesn't like impact our child. Like, how do we do it so it doesn't impact our child at all? And can you ever, in your opinion, can you ever divorce so that there is no negative impact on a child?
I guess it depends on what you mean by negative impact, right? Because there's always going to be not so positive and negative feelings involved. People are going to feel sad. Kids are no different. There's going to be issues of grief and loss. For some parents, that is a negative experience and they don't want their kids to go through that. That's unavoidable. But in terms of long-term negative impact, there are lots of things that parents can do to lessen the impact on their kids on a long-term basis. And if staying together means that your kids are exposed to a high level of conflict or, emotional outbursts by parents and a poor example of a healthy relationship, that too has long-term negative consequences for children. So I think sometimes it's how do you minimize the harm and the damage that can be done to kids by divorcing, and recognize there are also some positive aspects of having two happy parents and two emotionally healthier parents in separate homes.
Yeah, I love that you made that distinction, because I do sometimes find that they just want to skip any negativity. Like, can we just skip any negative emotion in my kid? And that would be weird if that happened. And so yeah, that's
impossible.
Yeah,
it's impossible.
Yeah. And also, if you've got two parents coming to you at that time, right, they've already been through quite a journey in their own minds, and their grief and loss are in a different place. And the kids, depending on the age and what they've witnessed, they may not even have an inkling that this is going to happen. So they're in a completely different spot, and you've got to allow them to then go through that grief and loss.
Yeah. And I think for parents, no parent wants to make a decision that is going to cause their child distress and upset and sadness. So even if it's the right decision for the marriage and the family, parents are going to feel guilty. And I think sometimes when parents want their children not to feel sad, you'll have 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays and lots of presents. So they try and upsell it to their kids because they don't want to sit with the guilt that they're feeling for creating a situation that's causing their children distress.
There was so we get down the nitty gritty of people who are actually separated or have recently separated, and I know there's probably going to be a few watching this on repeat. There was something in your Instagram feed the other day that caught my eye, and I just wanted to kind of explore with people that I talk a lot about, and that is you wrote emotion as a contagion, right? So the idea that emotions are contagious, right? And if you just take that out of the family law context, and if you're hanging around with people who are really kind of pretty down on that day or stressed out, then that's how you're going to feel, right? As opposed to the opposite. So I think, most people get the concept that, well, emotion is pretty contagious depending on who I hang around. But why is this important? Why is this important at the point of separation to understand that your emotions can be really contagious onto your child?
I guess because, when you're going through a divorce or separation, there's going to be a lot of distress and anger and hurt for any number of reasons that might relate to your partner's behavior or an affair, or you've fallen out in love with one another, or, it's not a nice place to be with, or they're not nice feelings to sit with. And if a parent is overly expressive in those feelings around children, it doesn't allow the children to feel what they want to feel or need to feel in terms of their changing family circumstances. And it can set the emotional tone surrounding the divorce. And I don't know, children are their own people. They're their own entity. They're going to feel what they feel. And we don't want their parents' feelings colouring their feelings towards what's happening or toward their other parent. If mum is angry at dad because dad gambled away all the money and perhaps slept with a secretary. I'm being very stereotypical here as well, I should, claim then. But the child's experience of their dad is only that he has always been fun and caring and loving. That's a really challenging situation for that child to be in. And we don't want them to take their mother's feelings surrounding their dad and let that change or influence their ongoing relationship with their dad post-separation.
It can be really confronting, though, kind of that in the moments of as an adult, your intense, acute distress, and your children as kind of this extension of you, and there's always been this kind of symmetry there, particularly if they're young and haven't kind of cut yourself off yet as a 14-year-old, but that they have completely different feelings and that are actually quite the opposite of yours about dad. And I'm using that as an example the other way around about mum, but that can be really confronting when you're feeling such strong feelings and then watching them go, yay, dad, bye, mum. And that's really, I find that's really confronting for people.
And hard, because you're wounded and you're hurt and you're grieving, and it is you want someone to validate your feelings and to empathize with you. It's just not your kid's role that situation. Yeah, to be that person or that being that validates and empathizes with you. That's not healthy for them because they don't have the life experience or the maturity, or even the emotional intelligence at that point in time to really understand all the complexities of relationships, of emotions. They don't have the language to talk about it in the same way that we as adults do as well. It's an exceptionally hard situation for parents to be in. And I don't think they need to pretend that everything's happy and they want it and this is a good thing. But it's not offloading the intensity of those emotions, especially the difficult and uncomfortable ones, so that the whole house, that sets the tenor for the whole household whenever anyone's home. That's just too much for kids, especially younger kids, to cope with, understand, and manage.
Yeah, and it's trying to explain to people. Put that into context. I like that you said that, you don't have to pretend everything's okay because kids will also kind of see through that, right? And, I've talked a bit in the last on these kind of lives and talked a bit about, my recent experience now of working in this field for so long and now recently kind of gone through a separation with two little kids. And obviously knowing up here, right, everything I have to do and most of the time did it. And I think like 2 days that my kids saw me just in a heap bawling my eyes out. And it happened twice. And I was like, oh my God, I can't show them this emotion and I can't do that, And it was like this guilt then because I knew the right thing, guilt that I'd showed them that I was sad. But that was okay. And I just explained to them that it was okay. I was feeling sad. Didn't go into the details of it though. So, it's very hard to keep it all together. Everything's okay all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's okay for them to see a parent upset, but that and you would have done this, I have no doubt. It's a sad day. The changes that are happening to our family, it's a sad thing, and my feelings just got the better of me, and they're all coming out. But I've got this, and I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay as a family. It's that reassuring them that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So I think that's a important thing when they do see a parent upset or angry, that parent is also letting them know that their shoulders are big enough to carry that feeling and everything's going to be okay.
Absolutely. I mean, for little people, you're steering the ship, right? And so if you've lost control of that ship, where does that leave them? And that's what's going to spiral them into anxiety. And they need to know that, exactly right. But I'm okay now, and I'm good. Yeah. We're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. They need to know also that big feelings are not something to be scared about or fearful of. That, they come and they go and they're manageable and they're bloody uncomfortable at times, but we're going to be okay.
And what an opportunity, for modelling that to them as well, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that leads us on to a really nice segue of your other kind of project. It's a bit more than a project on the side, as a children's author, because you've got some beautiful books, and I thought I would just read a tiny bit. So this is from Max's Divorce Earthquake. Okay. And I guess this book, just coming from what we were talking about, is about parents assisting children in labeling feelings, right? And making sense of how their body feels. So I'm going to read a little bit. Is that okay, Rachel, if I read a tiny bit?
Absolutely, go for it.
So before Sunday, Max didn't know the word divorce. He really didn't know what it meant. But the word divorce felt very much like how Max imagined the word earthquake might feel. The ground beneath Max shuddered, his head felt dizzy, and his body trembled. More than anything, Max wanted his world to stop shaking. And then it goes through Max's experience of his parents separated. I love that it throws in little details that kids are going to really relate to about, mum and dad sat on opposite sides of the school hall during concerts, but there was less yelling and arguing. Max found it hard to keep track of his toys, his favourite soccer jersey. It was harder than it used to be. And it was also hard remembering who was picking him up from school or taking him to band practice. I just love it. And it goes on. And I love, the resolution at the end, when it says that basically that earthquakes don't last forever. And at the end of the day, they, like we were just saying, they come and go, and we can have these enormous feelings, and then they pass, and get our feet firmly back onto the ground. And that was a big learning kind of lesson for Max. So it's beautiful. So I want to ask, what was the inspiration? I mean, I'm assuming it's your clients and your work, but anything else that you can tell me, because I don't know, we haven't talked about it. And how did you get around to little Max, and how did this come about?
Well, you're right. Like, it came about because, I do a lot of work supporting children in that space when their parents are divorcing and separating and their families being rearranged. And there are some really great children's books out there. You would know of them. I think there's Mum and Dad Glue, My Family's Changing, When My Parents Forgot How to Be Friends. There's one about dinosaurs and the process of separation. But I really struggled. I didn't want a picture book when I was to use with my clients or my kids' clients that necessarily spoke to the process of the divorce. I wanted a book that spoke to the feelings and the body cues around those feelings without it judging the issue of divorce, if that kind of makes sense. So I did want a book that spoke to the feelings, that spoke to the body cues, that I could use in my work with clients, and that I could recommend to parents who were going through separation and divorce. And that's kind of how it came up. And then I just spoke with a lot of the kids that I was working with, and they, there was themes that came up that I included in the book, themes of problems like who's picking me up from school, or where my soccer kit is, or why don't my parents sit together anymore. So there were common themes and there were common feelings. So yeah, it was just a matter of creating a story that included all of those things.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And how, they are very common themes, like you and I would know, and how seeing that child would feel, reading that, thinking that they're the only ones going through some of that stuff, and then reading it and going, oh, there's a whole book about that. Like, there's a whole book that gets me and how I'm feeling right now. Like that must be really exciting in some ways for a kid to get. And so your other one is Harriet's Expanding Heart. And I wanted to ask you kind of, some tips for people out there watching at the moment. And this book is about, that our love and our hearts are not this closed, finite amount, and we can keep adding people. And that leads us on to partners and step parents. And that is another common question we get asked, right? How do I introduce my new partner? And so I love that there's a book out there, because I don't know of any other books about this specific topic.
No, there's starting to be a few more. The ones that are out there, they're very Americanized, and they have a different experience of separation in America in terms of post-separation custody arrangements. That's different from our experience here in Australasia. So yeah, there's I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but I can certainly email them to you afterwards. But yeah, there's very few books out there that I would recommend to my clients and my families that I work with here in Australia. Yeah, but
and
similar
anyone watching now, and let's just stereotypically come up with a family who's bubbling along reasonably amicably, as much as you can. We're not best friends, but we're managing, and we certainly haven't used the court system. And I've been dating this guy now for a couple of months. Not me, by the way, but let's just say theoretically, a friend of a friend. What do you think about introducing new partners? Like, is there any rules around that time frame? How do you do it?
I think, look, there is a lot of information out there that tells us how to make it more successful for kids and for families. So I think there's a step at a time saves 9. So, you go slowly. You certainly want to make sure that as a parent, you have dealt with all your baggage that comes from your separation, before you're jumping into a relationship and introducing the children to that. And you do need to allow your kids time to grieve the family unit as they experienced it. And that can take time. So you want to make sure, if you're introducing them to a new partner, that you and the partner, the new one, are really clear about, is this relationship serious? Are you ready to be in a relationship that involves children that aren't yours? And have you dealt with all your baggage from prior relationships? So ideally, you want to wait at least 4 to 6 months or longer if there are complicating factors such as ongoing and unresolved court proceedings around custody. I think also as well, post-separation, it's okay for parents to date. It's okay for them to have flings. You can see as many people as you want. You don't need to introduce them all to your children. And sometimes, if there's any silver linings, a shared care arrangement does allow you some freedom to go and pursue those types of appropriate and completely above board adult activities, right? Yeah. But I think for primary school age kids and older, you want to give them some idea that their parents are maybe dating. So that the idea suddenly when a partner arrives on the scene, they're not like, but we didn't even know. So you might want to say something to your kids. And I'm going to, we're talking about those amicable situations where families and parents are able to work cooperatively together. You might be saying, look, Dad and I just wanted to let you know that there may be a time where either he or I will be meeting other grown-ups or another grown-up for coffee or a bite to eat when we're not taking care of you. And both Dad and I agree that these types of meetings and these types of socializing are pretty okay, right? So kind of setting the scene without giving them all the dirty details or giving them too much adult information. And then if there does become somebody special, you can even give that person a name. I'm going out with, Scott this evening. And the kids don't need to necessarily meet that person straight up, but at least they know some basic information at a basic level that there's stuff going on. And then ultimately, when it does come time and you and your partner are both saying, okay, it's time for us to meet the kids, you do it slowly. Maybe it's a gathering it's at a social event, a barbecue where there's lots of people and other children. And if it does get to that one-on-one stage and you both have children, I would certainly suggest that you meet your partner's children without your children being present, and vice versa, because it's really hard to give these new children that you're meeting for the first time attention to that meeting while you're having to parent and care for your own kids. And that might be quite overwhelming for all the kids and all, both adults to be in the one place at the one time first up. But
Mm.
yeah, there's certainly, I mean, I could go on, but that would be my, don't be afraid to go super slow in getting to know your partner's children and them you know, if this relationship is one, you're going to have a lifetime to bond. So take it slow, get it right, and you'll increase the chances of that step family situation being successful.
I love that. That's really, really good. I definitely, you know, always advise people the barbecue, the group setting, so it's not like, you know, one spotlight on one person. It's like, you know, and then, you know, I've mentioned Scott, I've mentioned him to you, right? This is him, and say hi. Then the kids run off and play with the other kids, or the, you know, whatever. And often that new partner has already met, say, your friends and your family too, like your parents or your friends, your close girlfriends, right, before your kids, because you want to gauge their idea and you want to get their opinion. So usually they're there comfortable chatting with people they've already met, and then the kids are there kind of as a periphery. And then, you know, but yeah, I like the idea of talking about them even before that they've met them, of you know, oh yeah, I'm going, remember I've said I've got this friend such and such, we're going out tonight when you go to Dad's house. And so they're aware of that concept there. And I kind of find, particularly primary school age children, it's quite funny. I mean, they're very kind of, yeah, they're switched on, right? And often after a while, once they also have dealt with the separation and their own grief, and, you know, maybe it's been even a few years, and they'll start throwing jokes about, like, you know, oh, who's daddy's girlfriend or who's mummy's boyfriend. And sometimes they try and test the water like that, like, you know, do you have a boyfriend? Or, you know, I mean, my 4-year-old's kind of said that. So it's kind of, you know, I don't know where they get that from, but often there are these little
from TikTok. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully not my 4-year-old, but yes. But often I like that idea that you don't, I mean, like any big adult topic, you don't have to give everything to kids at once. Just give them a little bit about, like, how would you feel if I was seeing someone, you know, else for coffee? And even if you are, don't go there yet. Just start small.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think quite often, if you said to certainly a 9-year-old, you know, I'm going to start just meeting some people for coffee, I mean, they're probably going to turn around and say, oh, you mean dating? They know. Right, they do know, but you don't need to give them anything more than that. But I think as well, and when kids have 2 homes and 2 families, they do worry about the parent that they're not with. And so them having some sense that parent is okay and doing fun things, and you know, that can also offer a degree of reassurance to children as well. But yeah, I think you'd want to gradually build up the amount of time that you and your new partner spend with your children. And I think it's always really important to stress to parents that if that first meeting doesn't go well, it's okay. It doesn't mean that it's not going to go well in the future. Likewise, if it goes swimmingly well and your kids absolutely love your new partner, that doesn't mean it's always going to be smooth sailing in the future either. So there's a lot of challenges and complexities that come with repartnering post-separation and when you've got kids. And I think, you know, there are some really great resources out there to help parents to upskill around that and to feel confident about moving into that new kind of stage of life.
Yeah. And you don't want to put, it kind of comes back to that idea of, you know, also having children as that separate entity to your own experiences and your own emotions. And I understand when you are, you know, super happy and maybe it's the first time you felt that happiness since your marriage, and you know, you want to rush, you want to get your children in there, and you want that picture to be, you know, you're desperate for that, but you also don't want to put pressure on that new relationship. Like, enjoy it while you know, without adding that extra layers of pressure as well.
Because I think when you repartner following a separation, you know, the rules are different. Like they really are. And what is at risk is different as well. Your children have been through a lot of grief and loss, and there's no guarantee that this relationship, in fact, we know that separation rates and divorce rates for second marriages are quite high because there's a lot of pressure on it that you just didn't encounter in a first-time family. So, it is challenging, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't give it a go and you shouldn't enjoy or want an adult relationship that meets both your emotional and physical and all those other needs that kind of come with it. But yeah, it's an interesting experience from the families that I hear with as well, because you're right, they want their partner to love their kids and their kids to love their partner because they love everybody. But not everybody, you don't fall in love with people overnight. They have realistic expectations about what that might look like.
Patience, people. All right. Look, we could very easily keep chatting, but I know this is a super broad question, and we'll have our own tips together working in this space. But if we're reaching out to someone now who's thinking about separating, about to separate, just separated, and we're keeping this kind of kid focused, what are your, I mean, I hate to say kind of top tips, but what's your message to people in that space at the moment who say, look, there's a possibility of us doing this amicably. There's no other risk factors there, but the marriage is ending and I've got these kids. What should they keep at the forefront of their mind?
I think first up, that they and their partner or their soon-to-be ex-partner, I think giving their children a balanced and an age-appropriate account of separation. So developing a story of separation. So that's what are they going to tell the kids about what's happening and about the separation. And it's got to be a story that doesn't apportion blame and that reassures their children that both their parents still love them.
What do you say, Rachel? Can I cut you off? What do you say to the parent who says, but that's lying to them because there is blame?
Yeah. And you know what that is? I get so many parents that say that, and
I know.
I get why. We're not lying to our kids. What we're doing is, and because I wrote something down because this always, it tugs at my heart because I get why. I think it's because children don't have the emotional maturity or the life experience to understand the complexities of the relationship. Like I said before, your separation story is not a work of fiction, and it's not about lying to your child. It's about protecting them from the things that they're developmentally, cognitively, or emotionally not equipped to handle. And it's about giving them something that they can process and make sense of their world. And it doesn't impact on their relationship with both their parents post-separation, because we know kids do better if following a separation, they can maintain a positive, loving relationship with both parents. And if we're involving them in the conflict by saying, your mum's a drunk or your dad's cheated on me, that is not helping them to adjust and deal with everything that they are going to go through following that separation. So, a 5-year-old is never going to be mature enough to handle a conversation about a parent's flaws or the complexities of an adult relationship in the same way that you and I can. So we don't want kids to feel that they have to comfort a parent, or that they have to side with a parent, or that they have to somehow behave differently to create peace between their parents. That's probably my best answer in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, and 100%. And it's I try and reference kind of other examples for them, right? Like outside of this, about you're not going to give your child at 5 the complexity of some other topic, adult topic.
On that, I read something actually the other day where somebody was giving an example about that, and it was like, so when you're telling them about how they were conceived, you're not going to go into the in-depth details about the actual sexual act that in which they were conceived. You might give some general sense about, mum and dad were on a date and they very much loved one another and had special cuddles or how it, but you don't give them all the dirty details of who did what and to whom and, in what position, right? So I was like, yeah, it's kind of same. You're giving them enough information to help them make sense of it and to answer their questions and to process what's happening to their family. But they don't need the dirty details for all those reasons that you wouldn't give them the dirty details about the act in which they were conceived.
And sometimes they even go one step further, for those ones that are really struggling with that, just say, what we're doing is actually we're just going to put the truth or what happened on hold. And I almost kind of go to the extent of like, if you want to take them out for a drink when they're 28 or 30, go for it, right? And you want to tell them, let me tell you what happened and what your father did. Because I kind of know that'll be, 15 years, 20 years down the back and the brain will be cognitively developed. And they'll be so far past it, they'll be able to take in that information in some nuanced way and be able to put it in its appropriate spot of, how awful that was to mum, but that, I can separate out that from my dad. And anyway, so sometimes even if I tell people, okay, all right, we can tell them, but we're just not going to do it now because the brain is not developed enough. Yeah.
And I think on that as well, in that moment, that parent is going through all their big feelings and they're emotionally flooded. Hopefully in 15 or 20 years' time, they have had an opportunity to create some distance between what happened and the way they feel about it, which might also change the way in which they share that information, or even if they share that information at all.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, that's my plan, but like, I don't tell them that. But yeah, I'm like, you're probably not going to want to in 15 years anyway. Yeah. So yeah.
Moved on. In 20 years' time, hopefully you've moved on. Yeah.
Okay. Look, this has been great. If people want to pick up one of your books, they can do so through us at our clinic. But where else can people get their hands on these if they would love to have a look at one of these?
They can buy them directly through my website, which is www.kinshipbooks.com. Otherwise, they're also available through all major bookstores, online and in store. So there's a variety of options available there.
There we go.
Yep.
Beautiful. And essentially, if you Google Rachel's name and the name of these books, you're going to find them. So they're wonderful resources. Even if you're a clinician watching this, working with kids in these situations, really, really great books. Thanks, Rachel. That was great.
Awesome. Well, we'll catch up again soon, I hope.
We will. Thank you so much. Happy Friday. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Bye.